Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to the Respond Customer Service webinar series happening the second Tuesday of every month. We're glad you've chosen to join us here today. My name is Jeremy Johnson, a member of the marketing team, and again, we're glad you've taken the time to join us on our webinar. A couple housekeeping details here before we get to today's presentation. We're excited to share with you that our EMS Billing Training schedule for 2018 is available online. And these two-day trainings are wonderful opportunities for you and your peers to get together with our trainers and talk through how to use the software to its fullest potential, different things happening within the industry, and other sorts of networking and wonderful tips and experiences that can be had there. So those trainings have also been approved for 11 continuing education units, so that's an added bonus for taking the time to make advantage of that experience. And those dates are available on tritech.com, and go to the Respond customer community and you'll see all the registration information there. And our first training is coming up on February 6th to the 7th in Augusta, Georgia. So please visit that page and mark those dates down on your calendar. For today's presentation, we are excited to have Dan Voss with us, and Dan will be handling some questions at the conclusion of his presentation. So in order to participate in that, you'll need to use your dashboard. If your dashboard collapses at any point while Dan's presenting, you can hit that little red or orange arrow to bring that dashboard back up, and then you'll be able to enter your question on the bottom portion of that dashboard. So that brings us to today's topic. I'll release updates and industry news with Dan Voss, our Senior Product Manager, and we're excited to welcome you to the webinar today, Dan. Good morning.
Good morning, Jeremy. Thank you, and Happy New Year to everyone. Very happy to be here, and in our session today, we're going to talk about some things that have happened in the not too distant past. We're going to talk about things that are going on right now, and some of the things that are going to come up in the future. I thought about calling this this session this morning Potpourri for 500 in honor of Alec Trebek, who, as you might have heard, they've stopped taping of Jeopardy for a little while because he had to have some surgery. So we got kind of a mixed bag of things that we're going to be talking about this morning. So yeah, this is kind of the Potpourri for 500 episode. Looking a little bit in the not too distant past, Billing 515 was released in November, and so most of you have probably been working with that already, but you may not have quite picked up on some of the new features that are available in billing, and so we're going to touch base on each of those just briefly. The first of those is bad address tracking. So you might have noticed in billing on the patient screens or any place that you find an address that might be something that we were going to send to a patient, or an address that we would use to send an invoice to a patient, there is a box now that you can check that says bad address. And that basically is just your way to mark that this address, you had it returned, it's a known bad address, and we've updated all of our customer-facing forms like the private invoice and patient statements so that if you try to generate forms and an account comes up with an address that's been flagged as bad, that'll generate an error report. So you won't put that piece of paper out in the mail, and you'll be able to look at your list on your error report, go back and deal with these bad addresses. Not a lot of training necessary to use this. It's just a matter of tick the box, and once you've corrected the address, then you uncheck the box and make it go away. And you'll note that you have bad address checkboxes on the primary address field, on the alternate address fields, and you'll find it on places like guarantor addresses and a variety of other locations. Works the same in all places. And the whole focus of that is that if you are generating an invoice or a statement that's supposed to be getting sent to a patient, then that will trigger an error check that will stop that one from being generated, shows up on your report. The next significant item in Billing 515 was the ability to use PCSs for any payer. So if you recall, the PCS functionality that's been in billing for a number of years revolved all around Medicare payers, so that in the case of a non-emergency transport, if the payer was a Medicare payer, you could get prompted if you didn't have a PCS available for that patient. And so what we've done now is expanded that capability to allow you to use it for any payer. And the control for that implementation is on the payer code itself. So if I come up into payer codes, we'll just retrieve one. And on the defaults tab of the payer code, there's now a checkbox that says non-emergency PCS. So if you if you have a payer that requires you to have PCS and they're not a true Medicare payer, you can pull up that payer code. You can check this box for non-emergency PCS, and then when you're entering non-emergency calls, and that is the payer on the call, you'll get prompted if you don't have a PCS for that patient already. So just two simple little features available in 515, along with the other things that we've done for stability and known issues to improve that you can use and leverage in your operation in order to be more efficient. All right, so since November, we also have had the release of the annual inflation factor, which came out, which we got a raise of a whole 1.1%. Don't spend it all in one place, and that's for the Medicare fee schedules. On the flip side, we're dealing with something that we haven't had to deal with for a few years, and that is the Medicare fee schedule bonus payments expired at the end of this year. Those are the 2% urban, 3% rural, and 22.6% super rural. Some places called it bonus payments. Other times they called them extenders. And we used to go through this every year. Every year these would be coming up for expiration, and in December we would be trying to get Congress to take action in order to extend the payments or reinstate them. And most of the time they got it done before the end of the year. Sometimes it was very early in the new year that they would take action. And we haven't gone through it for the last couple of years because the last time they had extended them, they extended them for multiple years, with the idea being that in the intervening time, they would get permanent relief passed by Congress to fix the fee schedule. Well, obviously, they haven't got fee schedule fixed yet, and so now we're in a state where those payments expired at the end of December. We need congressional action in order to reinstate those. We're hopeful that they won't take a long time to reinstate them. They have in the past, when they have done things after the first of the year, they have made those changes retroactive. The retroactive part of that has, the last time they did that, caused a lot of challenges for EMS providers because the claims had already been processed. You'd already posted them into billing, and suddenly the MACs were reprocessing them, and it was changing your the copay amounts. It was changing the amount that we were getting paid, and so it created a lot of extra work in the industry. The good news is, if you use remittance processing, we learned that lesson really hard when it happened the last time, and so that was built into our design for remittance processing. So should we go down the path where we end up with a retroactive increase or a retroactive reinstatement of these 3 bonus payments, and you are doing your posting through remittance processing, remittance processing should clean up those adjustments and the new payments with the electronic remittance without you having to take any manual action on your side. The American Ambulance Association is, confident that they're going to get these things reinstated. They are out encouraging providers to contact their congressman to try to push this through. They actually have been doing email addresses or email campaigns and have a website up with an easy way for you to contact your members of Congress. And for those of you that are online right now, I'm going to just send out the link for that website to you in your chat window. So you should all have that right now. So besides the Medicare fee schedule bonus payments expiring, there was also some confusion over the dialysis transport prior authorization pilot project. That is a project that is implemented in select states right now. Those of you who are dealing with prior authorization and have been for a while, you probably got notice back in November or so that this project was going to expire, and there was one MAC in particular that had sent out a notice to everybody that said, okay, as of December 1st, they weren't going to do prior authorization anymore. And then within about a week later, CMS sent out a transmittal advising that this prior authorization pilot project was being extended for another year. So if you saw the email that said you didn't have to do prior authorization and you missed the notice that says that you do, you still have to do prior authorization for those dialysis transports if you are in one of those pilot project states. Last piece of industry news, and this will also dovetail into what we're working on in Billing 516. That is the Medicare Beneficiary Identifier, which is going to be replacing the HIC numbers. The Medicare Beneficiary Identifiers, there's going to start sending out new cards in April. And if you look at the example of this card, you'll notice that that Medicare number is not at all like a Social Security number. So the new Medicare cards will start coming out in April. There is a transition period for use of the new Medicare cards. That transition period starts April 1st of 2018 and goes to December 31st of 2019. So we've got a lot of runway for this to get implemented and for people to get used to it. And we'll be seeing, watching to see if CMS stays on schedule with this. There is some skepticism based upon CMS's other initiatives where they bring out something new that tends to have it either get delayed or allow a longer transition period. So we'll see what ultimately happens with this for this transition period from April 1st of this year to December 31st of 2019. Now, during the transition period, if you have a patient that gives you the new Medicare beneficiary number, you can plug that into your policy number field in billing, and you can send that claim, and that should work just fine. If you have a patient that you are sending claims for and you have the old HIC number, you can send claims in for that or using that number. So during the transition period, you can use either the HIC number or the new Medicare beneficiary identifier. And we've got quite a long runway for you to implement those. And for the purposes of billing, it's really just a new policy number that you're going to be putting in on the patient payer. However, Billing 516, we do plan a couple of new features to help ease this transition, because we know that this could be a lot of work for customers to have to re-enter all of those. And so these features will help out. These features will help out with cutting down on some of that workload. The first of the features, and it's under development right now, so I can't really show it to you, but I can show you where it would affect. Today, on payer codes, if we look at the defaults tab, and I'll pull up a payer code, there is a box here that is for the policy number mask. We implemented this a couple years ago as a feature so that there is a specific masking syntax that you put in there that you could say, oh, well, I need to have 9 numbers and a letter. And so you could set up a policy number mask for payers that have consistent policy number formats. And then when you enter a patient payer for that payer code, if the policy number you put in doesn't match the mask, you get, it doesn't let you enter it. You have to fix the policy number and before you can save it. So with the fact that we will have Medicare patients over this transition period that some will have the old HIC number format, some will have the new Medicare beneficiary identifier format, and those two formats are not the same. So we'll have a little problem if you have a policy number mask set up already for the old HIC number format on your Medicare payers. So what we're going to do about that in billing is we're going to add an additional button here, which will let you create multiple policy number masks for any payer code. In that case, you'll be able to have your policy number mask. If you use one already for the old HIC number format, you'll be able to enter that in. You'll be able to enter another mask in for the new Medicare Beneficiary Identifier format. And so that way, when you are typing in a patient payer or saving a patient payer, it will accept either of those formats for the policy number. If you are using the policy number mask already and you get a new beneficiary number before we get 516 released to you, that mask would prevent you from putting the MBI number in, and the way to resolve that would be for you to temporarily remove the policy number mask from the payer code so that you'll be able to put in either format. And then once billing 516 is released in the first half of this year, you'll be able to implement those masks for both formats of the policy number. The other part of the functionality that we were going to implement revolves around remittance processing. And so in remittance processing, there are some segments that will allow a payer to send corrected beneficiary information with the remittance. So in the case of this transition, they'll be able to use that corrected information segment to send back the patient's Medicare beneficiary identifier if you send a claim in with the HIC number. So what we're going to do is provide some configuration options in the database setup, so you can choose to use this functionality in remittance processing or not use it, and you'll be able to turn it on for specific payer types or payers that you want to use it for. And what will happen is when you if you send a claim in to Medicare and you use the HIC number and you get the remittance back, then when remittance processing sees that corrected policy number, it will automatically update the patient payer for you with the new policy number in the policy number field. So you'll see the Medicare beneficiary identifier listed in the policy number field, and then you'll have a history record on the patient that will show that the policy number was changed from the old HIC number to the new MBI number. That should greatly reduce the workload for having to update patient information with those policy numbers over time. So just as a review, billing 516 and MBI will be expanding the payer code policy number mask feature to allow multiple masks per payer code. And then we'll use remittance processing to update the policy numbers automatically. So if you are not using remittance processing already, this would be a good reason for you to look at implementing remittance processing and processing those remittances, especially the Medicare remittances, electronically once we get into this transition period and have billing 516 released, so these capabilities are in place. And as always, billing 516 will have some other things that will come out in there. We're looking at some integrations with some other third parties also on our roadmap for 2018. Those won't be in the 516 release, but will be planned into the 517 release, which will be planned for the second half of 2018. So with that, we've kind of covered what did we do in 515. We've covered what's happening in the industry. We've talked a little bit about what's coming in 516. So we can move towards some questions. And I have one that has come in that asked, is the transition period for the date of service or for claims submitted? And I will have to tell you the truth, I'm not certain about the answer to that question. If it is like most of the transitions that have been out there, it will likely be by date of service. Though given the long runway that they have with this, it will probably be, they could potentially do it by date of submittal. In either case, it probably won't be an issue because April 1st is the beginning of the transition period. And if CMS stays on track, no clients or no beneficiaries will receive their new cards with the new MBIs until sometime in April. So you probably won't see any Medicare beneficiary identifiers prior to April, and we'll just have to watch for more details on that as we get into it. I know CMS is going to be doing an open door forum, for things about the Medicare beneficiary transition just a little bit later this month. And so if CMS has a website specifically for their transition, you can go take a look at that and find out about their open door forum. Next question, will TriTech ever consider giving a total number of records that are in an easy review? We can consider that, yes. All right, are there any other questions out there? All right. Well, with no other questions, then that brings us to a wrap for this week's customer service issue or webinar. Hope that you found it useful, and invite you back to come back to our future webinars.